I think the what doesn't work is probably much longer. Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting couple of years. So I've been in Kent for just over 2 years now. So I joined right as the first lockdown was happening, which was an extremely interesting time to join any institution, and came with its own challenges. But really, many of the things that we've been trying to do with student comms have been pretty much in the emergency mode. So something's happened nationally, we need to let students know. I mean, lockdown being a good example, but then releases and other things that have gone on from there. And even when we're kind of come out onto the other side of that, a lot of it's around industrial action and other things as well. So there's been a whole variety of stuff that we've needed to get over. And of course, our predominant form of interacting with students for these sorts of things is email, but we know students just simply don't read them. So the number of discussions I have with students, either directly or through other forms of contact, where they are completely unaware of stuff that we've sent to them is palpable. We don't really have a mechanism of knowing how many of these things are open, but even if they are open, they simply don't get internalized. So it's so we've got so it's kind of quite traditional, I think, Justin, that we're doing emails, we've got kind of bits on websites and things, but I'm not at all convinced how well these are viewed. Clearly there are some social media type things as well, but we use those for far less of that direct communications than we do of more just information stuff, and it tends to be quite light and jolly when it's on social media, rather than some of the important things that we need to try and get over for understandable reasons, of course. But again, it's I don't think we're anywhere near hitting a sweet spot where we know that the message is getting across to our students. More generally, our engagement with students on campus has been very, very patchy since the pandemic began. That was kind of understandable to begin with. Students weren't on campus. They were, living elsewhere. Not all students by any means. We still had a significant number that were on campus. And we did set up a very wide ranging series of kind of webinars, during lockdowns for students. And they started off being really well attended and then trailed off into nothingness. So again, it's a good example is that I did a session. I've done either face to face or online sessions recently around some important changes that we're trying to make in terms of the overall academic year structure at Kent. And in the online version, we had 3 students turn up. In the face-to-face one, we had about 6. So it's really difficult to get that level of engagement.
Yeah, I was going to say, the other issue you've got at Kent seems to be you've got this devolution model.
Yeah.
So, there's lots of, and I think this is fairly recent as I understand it. It's, spreading the load on communications to the divisions, whereas most other universities now have gone the other way and centralised
it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's causing, I think, a bit of attention. But I guess what I'm interested in is knowing what the impact of all this is, what problems it causes. You think beyond just not having strong engagement, does it lead to particular things that are happening there or not happening?
So maybe it's good to work through a couple of examples, if you like. With the recent industrial action, which fortunately is now resolved, but with that, it was clear that students were not getting the messages that we were sending out. So things would escalate quite quickly into either direct messages or things coming through to me, or my phone was ringing off the hook with students trying to get in touch because they either didn't understand, or sometimes it was students, sometimes it was parents, again not getting to grips with what the university was trying to do in that regard. And it was a difficult message we had to send out. Any marking and assessment boycott is a tough one to be able to indicate to students that you have their best interest in heart and you're doing things that will not affect their the quality of the degrees or the outcome that they're likely to receive. It's not a straightforward message to be able to give, but we clearly did not get that message across to a very significant proportion of the students.
Yeah.
So again, it's you'll know better than anyone, the number of different channels that we are likely to need to use. I'm not really sure that we are using them all to their greatest extent. And some of that may still be related to, although students are now back on campus is still very quiet. It's not like it used to be. I mean, again, I don't have a frame of reference for this because, I was in Manchester.
Where, it's always busy.
Yeah. Exactly, but everyone that I speak to, and we just look at what's happening with the kind of retail outlets on campus. The takings are hugely down in comparison to pre-pandemic numbers. The student rooms are being occupied, but their behaviour is quite different to what it perhaps was, 2 and a bit years ago.
Right. And so, in terms of looking at communications as a whole, if there's a scale of 0 to 10, and 0 is awful and 10 is fantastic, where would you say the university is on that scale of its ability to communicate effectively with students at the moment?
That's a tough one, isn't it? Maybe a 3 or a 4?
So quite low.
Yeah, it's it's difficult to quantitate. We can all use different measures for that, but the team is really good. Tim Davis particularly is fabulous. I mean, he's really, really good. At some of the crafting of the messages and things that are there. And Ali as well. I mean, again, it's a good team that's looking at it, but the messages are kind of stopping with a really nicely crafted piece of text. And it doesn't necessarily get through to those that we need to. And again, I'm hoping we're not going to be in crisis management mode for forever. It has seemed like that for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But as we move on to more kind of what might be described as business as usual things, it's just kind of thinking about what we might want to do differently, what sort of channels we would want to use, what approaches we might be able to take to really start to drive home some of the things that we need to do. And we've got some big challenges at Ken. We've got some big changes that need to come through, and not having a mechanism by which we can reasonably comfortably know that students are getting some of these messages is going to be problematic.
So you mentioned Tim and Ali. So do you have a regular meeting with them? Is there a student communications group that you belong to that looks at this, discusses this?
No, not really. So we bring someone from the comms. It's a small comms team.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, that may be one of the failings, that we don't have a separate. Certainly, I don't attend a separate meeting with them. We do tend to bring them into the meetings that take place, so that we can do some of that work together. I've always been of the view that you're coming last minute to a comms person is usually a way it's going to fail anyway. You need to make sure that they're engaged with it from the beginning, so they do understand it. Although again, recognizing that their time is precious as well as everything else, and just being in unnecessary meetings is not especially helpful. But the team is small. We've relied on contractors to some extent. So Hannah Warrington is one of them. Yeah, again, she and I have worked very well together, but she's a contractor. She's an independent. We've used Caroline as well, again, who's also a contractor. Again, work really well, but again, not necessarily the way that I think we would probably want to go moving forward in terms of making sure we have the capacity and expertise within the structures of the university to understand how the university works and what we're trying to do, and then be able to convey that in an appropriate way.
Yeah. And something I picked up is this reference to the student hub project. Then, Are you able to tell me a bit more about that and where things are with that?
That's a very good question. Yeah, so it's an idea and notion that seems to have got a life of its own, but it's not the student hub that's the issue. So at a very fairly typical of Kent, actually, to be honest, Justin. At a fairly early stage, there was some notion floated from somewhere, not from me, I'm not quite sure where it was, that we should have a student hub, that, somewhere visible on campus. I'd fully support that. Somewhere where we can say, we look after students at Kent, and look, this is where you can get this. That somehow got